Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to What's Up With That, the show that brings you interesting people, places, cultures, and subcultures here in the South Bay, the San Francisco Bay Area, the state of California, and beyond. And tonight, what's up with the Vagina Warriors? Who are the Vagina Warriors? And what's up with all the violence, domestic violence, rape, these kinds of issues going on in our country, and what are we going to do about it? Well, let me tell you something. I don't think there is a single day that goes by that we don't hear of some horrific story, rape, violence against men and women. And the problem is that people see it, they understand that there's a problem, but do we move to action? Well, most people know. What we say is, oh, that's a terrible thing, and we would just hope it would go away. But the truth of the matter is, it's not going away. Well, there are people out there who have decided to make a stand. Enough is enough. It's time to end the violence. And tonight, I am so excited to introduce you to two women who are there at the forefront from the Vagina Warriors. They are Marilee Mondejar. She is the president of the Filipino Women's Network. Thank you so much for coming down.
Oh, my pleasure.
And Tisa Mendoza. Hi. Founder and visionary of Buzzledom Incorporated. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. All right. So here we go. Well, as always, what's up?
What's up?
What's up? Yes.
Okay. And let's start with the history of the Vagina Warriors. What is the history of the Vagina Warriors?
The Vagina Warriors are selected every year by our organization, the Filipino Women's Network, in conjunction with the Filipinas Against Violence campaign. Mm-hmm. And we started the campaign in 2004. And it really started, the awareness really started in 2000 when a Filipino woman was brutally murdered by her partner in front of her two children, Claire Joyce Temponco. Wow. And because of Claire Joyce's murder, the community started talking about, we've got to do something about this. We've got to do something about it. Yes, and it actually, San Francisco actually decided to create the Justice and Courage Oversight Panel, which oversees the city's system-wide response to domestic violence because of the problem with Claire Joyce. And so there are advocates out there demonstrating, trying to make sure that something can be done. And that's what the Vagina Warriors are about. We honor them every year for their work and for their advocacy. And
so how did you become a member, or how did you become a member of Vagina Warriors?
Well, that's a long story. What version do you want? Well, the way I became a Vagina Warrior was I first became a member of the Filipino Women's Network. And, nothing happens by chance. I believe that everything happens for a reason. And it just so happened at that time in my life that I was going through a loss, if you will. My business wasn't doing well, and just a lot of things were happening in my life at that time. And it was just really interesting that one of the things that I was doing to soothe myself was to reach out to women, because it was one of the things that I felt that I didn't have in my life. So I thought, what better thing to do than to reach out to my own peeps,
right?
So the Filipino community. So when I did, I actually joined to do what I do really well, which was to fundraise and to raise sponsorship dollar. And it was one of my tasks to interview the Vagina Warriors, and you had a select group of people that we were going to interview that year. And my story actually started to unfold, and my own story being that I was gang raped when I was 15 years old in high school. And so I never I even thought that I would be considered a Vagina Warrior, because it's your mindset. That's what you think of when you're a woman, when you've been violated. When, as a woman, we tend to think that way about ourselves, and we're kind of taught that.
Say, you blame yourself and all this.
And that's pretty much my story too, because, I was drunk, and even when I went to be questioned about it later on down the road, I wanted to try to press charges. Even the police officer, who was a woman, was like, well, what were you wearing? It wasn't, I deserved it, was pretty much the message that I got. So who was I to think that I would even be considered for becoming a Vagina Warrior until you basically told me.
We selected Tisa because of her story and the fact that she really turned around her life and became a role model and an example for other young women that you can come out and tell your story. It is not your fault.
Right.
And when I first met Tisa, she was right away asked me, how much money do you want to raise? And she had a check with her.
All right.
And so as a producer, you know, we produced the Vagina Monologues, both in English and Tagalog. We had it translated to Tagalog. And a lot of it is to create awareness in the community, that we can talk about it. So she came at the very beginning in 2004, when we were struggling with the word vagina, the word puki, and we were getting a lot of emails, we were getting a lot of complaints from the community that how dare we even talk about this? We don't talk about this in our families.
Especially our community.
Especially in our community. And she came out and told her story.
Right.
And of course, there were a lot of reactions to that. And that's really what a Vagina Warrior is about. There are women and men who have either experienced violence or witnessed violence, but instead of getting machete or a gun or a machine gun and kill the perpetrator or express their anger through additional violence, they actually turn around their lives and become advocates to make sure that violence does not happen to other women and girls again.
Right. And I mean, the stigma, that's the stigma, just getting people to talk about these kinds of things, you know, and like you said, we hear it about so many times where, you know, I mean, there's cases every day where the police say, well, you shouldn't have been wearing, you know, your story's been told, but there's this ignorance that just lingers.
There is. And, you know, even before I met Marilee, I was doing work for the youth. I did talks to the Smart Girls programs. I reached out to the youth in high school. My high school life sucked, basically. And so, you know, when that happened, that was like the highlight of my high school experience. And so I did naturally migrate to talking to the youth and wanting to help them. And that also included like the boys' stories. I mean, boys try to fit in that man box just as much as, and society puts men in a certain way, that they have to be a certain way. And so that was really a lot of what work I did on top of that, was to reach out to both men, the young men and the young women.
Yeah. I mean,
and one of the things that we do for our cast and crew when we put on the show every year is that we ask, maybe require, our cast and crew members to attend an anti-domestic violence workshop.
I mean, that's great.
Yes, because it also helps our cast and crew members to become advocates and to understand how to help. You were saying earlier that we talk about it, we say, that's too bad it happened to so-and-so, but what do we do about it? What we have found as we do the shows every year, as we have our campaign in the spring, is that there's not one in the room that does not know anyone who is either going through an abusive relationship, in an abusive relationship, or has left an abusive relationship.
So it's a real communal thing, you know, it's people helping people.
And the one question that always keeps coming up, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to help her. And so understanding what domestic violence is about, understanding issues of power and control is really what our campaign is about. That it is not your fault, that there are ways of managing relationships, and there are ways of helping out those we think or we suspect are in an abusive relationship.
Hold that thought. We'll talk about that because it's a very important issue, and we're going to take a short station break. And we'll be right back with the Vagina Warriors. See you in just a second.
Hello, my name is Bonnie Bryan, and I'm the Outreach Co-Chair for Transgender San Francisco. We are the Bay Area's largest transgender outreach, social, education, and activities group. We welcome all transgender individuals, male to females, female to males, cross-dressers, drag queens, kings. Any and all are welcome to come and visit us and sit down, talk with us, learn a few things about each other, and enjoy a good night. We have lots of activities. We do lots of events throughout the year. We hold a monthly meeting. You can check us out at www.tgsf.org, where our events are all listed. And we welcome you to come up and see us and enjoy a glass of wine or soda or anything else you might like, and meet a few interesting people.
Hi, I'm back here with Marilee and Tisa from the Vagina Warriors, and we were just talking a little bit about the crimes and the victim's feelings and, you know, the guilt and whatever. And I understand, you deal with a lot of different situations. Why don't we talk a little bit about that and what you do? Like, if someone comes to you and they say, okay, this is my story.
Well, first of all, I want to say that the Filipino Women's Network is not an agency, a domestic violence agency. We are a nonprofit association of Filipino women living in the U.S. So when we get a phone call, then, and this is the reason we produced the anti-violence resource guide, the V Diaries. The first time that we did the show, we logged in over 100 calls. And it always starts with, I know somebody. I know somebody. And you can tell that it's them. And at that time in 2004, I felt like, oh my God, how can we help these women? And I'm not a counselor. We're not an agency, so we came up with this anti-violence resource guide so that we listed where they can go to get a restraining order, where they can go seek help, shelter, for example, maybe some money, help with the children. So a lot of the violence comes from, financial, for example. Some of the stories would be about they don't, they're given an allowance, or she has to ask for money for whatever, for basic like needs like
humiliation.
Yes,
total.
They're not allowed to go out. We had one person who said the story that it was actually the daughter who said that, I never understood why my mother would always complain about being short and how she could not reach, shelves in the kitchen. And what she realized later, that her father would actually make sure that the basic needs that her mother needs are always on the upper shelf.
So cruel.
And then there's no stool, there's no stepladder.
Yeah.
And so she grew up, they would always make fun of her mother. Too short, you can't reach over. And so she has to ask her children, she has to ask her husband. That sounds very ordinary, but I could just imagine what her mother went through, the humiliation to ask for help, to reach for, her basic needs.
The creation of a cycle of total dependency where you could actually put someone down.
Exactly.
And that there's people out there who actually do that kind of stuff.
And when she came to us and auditioned for the show, and we started talking about the many forms of violence, and she shared that story, we were in tears because you could just feel what her mother must have gone through. Another person who came to us was that she said she would always pass by, walk to the bus stop, and every morning she would see this woman who would look out her window, would wave, and she would wave back, but she always sat in this place, and she never saw this woman outside in the street. Later on, and she kind of wondered, what is she doing there? Why is she always sitting there? So she actually started imagining that she may be handicapped, maybe she can walk, maybe she can talk, And then later on, she found out that she was actually being held in prison by her husband, and but. See, the thing that we try to do is to help our members understand what the issues of power and control and what violence is about, and how it comes in many forms. It's not necessarily physical. There was somebody who came also and told us a story where her husband always beat her, where you won't be, that are not visible, the scars won't be visible, the black and blue, the spots won't be visible, so it was always inside,
and that they were probably afraid to even go out because they'd come back and get beaten again.
Yes, or being yelled out, or not being allowed to go to church, and so we're starting to understand the many forms of abuse, and that, and it, there's this myth that, women victims of domestic violence are uneducated, or or are immigrants, or they don't speak English.
And that is a big myth. You're hitting a really big, important issue here, and it's not true.
I mean, like Tisa, she's a very successful, young woman. She owns her own business. She always reinvents herself, and she is a survivor, and just in our own, group alone, community leaders have come up and told their stories. The mayor of a city here in the San Francisco Bay Area, she finally came out and told her story, that she is a survivor, that she was in an abusive relationship, and told her story of how she left. So I think what we're also accomplishing is allowing women to tell their stories,
Right.
and to assure them that.
Well, they say that's the best therapy of all, is
Yes.
to be able to talk about it. I mean, you think about groups like AA and all that. That's what they're founded on, talking. We need to talk and share, and you know, it's awesome that you're out there and that you've done this. And what I really like about what you said earlier was how you said that you have educated all the people involved in V-Day and the Vagina Monologues, because I think that's so important, because now I think you have a working force out there. I mean, you have people who, like you said, you can, you know, that in
Yes,
itself
yeah.
is a miracle,
Yeah.
because people, like I said in my intro, they, you know, this, okay, we know this exists and it's bad and it's wrong, but let's,
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
and so
And,
it's-
and so when they initially they come to audition for the show, or they come and volunteer for the Filipinas Against Violence, we have a court watch. For example, we track cases where Filipino women are murdered. This year, actually, 3 of the murders that we tracked have all come into completion. All
See?
3 men were convicted.
congratulations.
Yes, and
yeah, see?
and so we.
I mean, that's what it's all about.
And that's what really it's all about. And so we basically rally the women to come and attend the sentencing, for example. There's, for example, the sentencing of Claire Joyce Temponco, the woman who really triggered this campaign in our community. Her perpetrator, her murderer, finally got arrested and convicted of second-degree murder. The sentencing is going to be December 12th. And we're encouraging our members to be there and to testify, and the community to be there, because we want the maximum sentence
Right,
for
of
Tari
course.
Ramirez. See, in March this year, another woman who was murdered, a Filipino woman, Marisa Corpus, her husband, was convicted of first-degree murder by a jury of 12 people. And the judge reduced the verdict from first degree to second degree. And we were so outraged.
Oh, yeah.
And it also educated us about the nature of the law. What we found out, for example, is that if I'm carrying a purse and you try to grab me, and in the process of grabbing my purse, you ended up killing me, you could actually be convicted of first-degree murder. However, if we are in a relationship, we're living together, and you murder me, the maximum you'll get is second-degree murder.
It's
I mean,
unbelievable.
the value of my life
Right.
is less than a purse. And so part of this education that we talk about is understanding why we were so outraged. We spoke to the judge. Why are you reducing the verdict of 12 people? And he said, it's because it's the law, it's the maximum that I can give. And he did not want his sentence to be overturned on appeal. And he said, if you want, and Judge Benson said, you want to change this, then you go to Sacramento and lobby and, you know, and try to change the law. So these are some of the things that is happening in our group. We get educated about the laws and how to help, how to recognize. Now, we're not saying that we're counselors. I don't want to say
I
that.
understand, though.
But at least understanding the signs.
You're out there,
and
you're
helping
making
them
yourself
find the
present,
help.
you're going to
Yes.
courtrooms and all that stuff.
Yes.
And that's really, that makes a big difference. I mean, people, like I was saying before, there's little things, you know, you think you're this little person and there's nothing you can do, but there's a lot you can do if you just take
Yes,
the initiative
yeah.
to go out and make a difference. Okay, we're going to take another short studio break, and we'll be right back to talk about V-Day and the Vagina Monologues. So we'll be right back.
What if you knew that the fastest way to make a better world is to better the lives of women and girls? You might be 1 in a million. We're asking 1 million women to join our global network and invest in women and girls. It's that easy to make a difference.
I am 1 in a million.
I am 1 in a million.
I am 1 in a million.
Be 1 in a million and fund forward. Give to a Women's and Girls Fund.
All right, we're back here with the Vagina Warriors, and we're going to talk about the production that you put on, the Vagina Monologues. And I can tell you, I took a group of students to Vagina Monologues myself and was so empowered by what was going on. I actually was like, wow, this is an unbelievable show. And I'm sure it's been the same for you, Tisa. Tell me, what happened with you in the Vagina Monologues?
Well, I was honored in 2004 as a warrior, so I was on the back end of it, and then in 2005 I got to perform in it, and that was an amazing amazing is almost, it doesn't do it justice what it did for me, and it actually gave me a lot of healing. So I was, it was an amazing experience to first of all be speaking the words of a real woman who experienced something, and to relate to the character from my own personal experience.
Right.
And there was one, I share this because it was so powerful for me. And by no mistake, Mary Lee asked me to audition with My Short Skirt. And My Short Skirt is just this powerful, powerful piece. And one thing that really stuck with me, especially because of my story being raped, gang raped when I was 15 years old. And earlier I had talked about my my experience with the police officer who interviewed me. And so there's this one piece, this one line where I say, my short skirt is not a reason for you raping me. And I would rehearse this every week with my husband, and I wept this one day, and I said, I'm so sorry, you got to just hold on, I'm really sorry, I don't know why I'm so upset. And my husband was like, come here, what do you mean you don't know why you're so upset? What you just said, this isn't just the story of this woman that you're putting out there. This is your story. And it seems so ridiculous to say, because clearly I remember that I had this, but I was so still detached from this happened to me. Yet when I spoke those words, I wept. And so it was very it was healing. It was it's not just me. There are many women who, I said, we talked about it earlier, there's no coincidences, that what shows up, the people who show up get a healing and give healing. There was one night in particular where I got to do the performance, and we invited battered women from the battered women shelters. And my intention of going on this stage that night was, this is not just for me. This is for every single woman in that audience.
Had you been empowered by that point?
I had, right now when I talk about it, I get goosebumps just talking about it. And after the whole entire performance, and I was in other skits, and I had fun ones, and it was great, and all the community, when I came, the most fulfilling piece of that journey for me was when I was out in Herbst Theater and standing out there, and it was just amazing. And this, two women came to me that were battered women, and they said to me, they said, thank you for saying that for us. And it was just this, that was my moment of, yes, this is what, and this is the work that you do, Mary Lee. I mean, that we do. But you keep it going. You know, you don't have to keep it going. And so I know it's not just touched me in this way. I know it's touched many people in this way. And so it was healing. It was a healing, amazing, connecting experience for me.
And that was, and with that perspective, now you have become, you know, a person who's going out and helping healing, you know, and
yeah, it's no longer something I'm afraid to look at. It's something that I've completely embraced, and it's something that,
and you have to, you know,
have
at some point you have to.
It's part of me, and it's taught me forgiveness of myself. It's taught me forgiveness of the people who were there. It's taught me forgiveness of my friend who was there, who left me there. Like I didn't. There was layers of this healing that I didn't know that I had to look at. And really that was one of the layers I looked at deeply.
And so you've done Vagina Monologues for several years now.
Since 2004, and we do it in both English and Tagalog. And it's usually during the spring in March, because it's Women's History Month, where we celebrate women. And the way we set it up is that when after we audition for about 6 to 8 weeks, we rehearse every Sunday afternoon, where they get to learn their lines and develop some self-confidence. But really what this is about is, I call it the Vagina Fest and a Love Fest and a Food Fest, of course.
It is.
Because it's always been food.
It is.
But
The Vagina Food Fest.
Yes. And what we try to do is to create a safe place for the cast members and their friends and the crew members to share their stories. And where people are not just learning their lines, but they're also learning about themselves. And this is also when we've decided that we need to put them through an anti-domestic violence workshop to understand the deeper meanings of why we're doing what we're doing, and what the words mean in the scripts that
Right.
Eve Ensler
Yeah.
has written,
Right.
For the Vagina Monologues. all these
Unbelievable
years.
script. We only have about a minute and a half. Let's talk about V-Day. What is V-Day?
V-Day is a global movement to end violence against women and girls, founded by Eve Ensler, who wrote the Vagina Monologue, who wrote and performed the Vagina Monologues. Her story was that as she traveled the United States, putting on her one-woman show,
Right.
women would come up to her and start sharing their stories because they related to the pieces that she wrote about. The Vagina Monologues are a result of interviews of over 200 women.
Right.
All she wanted was to put on a show, right? She was an artist, but she didn't realize that there was this movement out there. There's all these
The
women.
impact that it would have.
And that's
yeah.
what she does, is she allows communities like ourselves, community organizations like ourselves, to use the script for free.
See, that's great.
And then, and we got it translated to Tagalog. We have an all-Filipino women cast.
Right. And I understand you've traveled
New York,
in New York,
and
wow.
New York and San Francisco, and hopefully next year Washington D.C. and Washington State and Los Angeles, because we have members nationwide.
Maybe
and
Manila.
Now,
Maybe
yes,
Manila.
it has actually been performed in Manila already.
Okay, great.
And so ours is, to really spread the message that there's help out there and resources for you.
All right. Well, Marilee and Tisa, thank you so much for coming on the show. Please, audience, get involved with this group. This is a great thing for you to do. Stop looking at the news and saying what you can do, because remember, no matter how bad something looks, there's something you can do about it. And I don't only feel that there's something that you can do about it. My personal feeling is that you have an obligation to do something about it. And only then can we start making a difference for this whole world, and especially for the women who've gone through this situation and anybody that's gone through this situation. So do your share. And to our viewing audience, as ever, if you're walking down the street and you see something interesting and you wonder to yourself, hey, what's up with that? Well, tune into our show, What's Up With That, and maybe you'll find exactly what you're looking for. We'll see you next week on What's Up With That. Good night, everybody.